thought, since I had mentioned earlier about bringing the first car into Bethel, I thought I'd tell a little story about that car, because it was kind of a famous vehicle around here. That little blue Volkswagen was, what a pilot had told me. He said, Northern Consolidated is going to start flying those F-27s in here, and they got that big, they modified it and had this big cargo door on it. They can even ship a small car in there. I said, really? I said, oh, living up at the hospital, it's real hard for us to get back and forth. I said, I'd love to have a little car. So we bought this little Volkswagen, and then they didn't have time to get it out here, and it was still sitting in Anchorage. And I was going into Anchorage for a weekend, and one of the guys out in the cargo office said, he said, your car's sitting right out there, cargo, waiting to come out here. He said, you could probably drive it while you're in Anchorage. I said, gee, that's a great idea. So I went out to the cargo office, and the guy out there was real nice, and he said, yeah. I said, go ahead and take it. I know it's not going to go out there for 4 or 5 more days. So I went out, he gave me the key, I went out and got it. Well, unfortunately, in order to get it ready to ship, they had to take off the one fender, which of course had one headlight on it, and both bumpers, which had the license plate on it. And but that didn't bother me too much, so I barreled out of there, and I had my daughter with me, and ran into some friends on the plane, and we were going to go out afterwards, and I had a babysitter lined up for Kathy, and so I pulled up in front of the Westward Hotel and went upstairs to put Kathy in bed and wait for the babysitter, and parked in a no parking place. It was just sort of an unloading place that I wasn't planning on being there very long, and fell asleep. And anyway, I woke up the next morning and, oh dear, I've got that car sitting out there. I hope it hasn't been towed away. So Kathy and I went downstairs, and sure enough, the car was still there. So we took off, and Kathy was watching for cops as we took the back roads. So we drove around. Didn't have any problem all weekend, and took the car back to the airport, and said, well, here's a Volkswagen. I sure hope you all can get it out there this week. And I had the cargo guys were always real friendly. We had a good relationship, and all of a sudden there was this cold atmosphere in this room, and this guy was glaring at me, and he said, boy, if you had any idea what we've been through this weekend because of you. I said, what's the matter? And he said, we got a call from the police. And he said, there was this car illegally parked in front of the Westward with no license plate, no headlight, and the only thing it had on it was a sticker from Continental Motors. They called Continental Motors. They couldn't tow it away because they didn't know who it belonged to. They called Continental Motors, and they said, that car is supposed to be out at Northern Consolidated Airlines to go to Bethel. One of their employees must have taken it and driven it around. So the guy that had let me take the car hadn't written it down anywhere, and he was nowhere to be found, and nobody knew all they knew was that the car wasn't there. Anyway, they weren't too happy about that. But anyway, I finally got it to Bethel, and one of the reasons that I had selected that car was because I had heard it could float, and also that you could get it out of the mud. And that was one of the reasons, because of the legendary Bethel mud, that I thought a car, instead of having to have a big truck, would work in Bethel. So everybody said, you cannot float a Volkswagen. I said, I read up about it. You can, they will float. And so then a couple of weeks, right after that, there was an article in the Fairbanks paper about a boy, a Volkswagen that had been parked by the Chena River, and a little kid in it, and he lets out the brake, it goes down the bank, and it's floating in the river. And it floated long enough that they were able to get a boat and tow it over to the shallow side on the other side and pull it up and save this kid. So I had my proof. Well, my husband did not want me to float the Volkswagen, and I really wanted to very badly. So anyway, about 3 months later, I was in Anchorage for a weekend, and I came back and I asked Bob, what was the news, what had been going on while I was gone. He said, oh, not too much. And then we went out, had a little picnic out by Hanger Lake, a bunch of us, and floated the Volkswagen. I said, you what? He said, yeah. He said, we decided to go ahead and float it. I was so mad. I was the one, it was my idea. I was the one that wanted to float that Volkswagen. How come you all did it while I was gone? I was just really furious. And he said, well, he said, I felt bad about it too. He said, but it just kind of came up. We were out there and had a piece of rope, and we just he told me how they did it and everything. And I was not only mad at him, I was mad at Georgie Chaney and Ray Miller and Jimmy Hoffman and Howard Elliot and a whole bunch of them. And so I stormed downtown and accosted them one by one and let them have it. They were telling me, sure how it happened and everything. And about 3 years after that, Bob confessed to me that they had not actually floated the Volkswagen. He just told me that story in order to get me off his back, and then I was mad all over again. But the worst part of it was that bunch of liars, Bob had not even worked out this story with them. Lying came so naturally to them. He went down. All I had to do was just mention this, and they just invented details. I think it was in the genes or something. I don't know what it was, but anyway, that. Yeah, maybe that's what it is. But I never did get to float the Volkswagen, but I almost had a baby in it because, and if it hadn't been for the mud was so deep, I was trying to get down to Dr. Jackson's office, and Bob was trying to hit me there, and the mud was really, really deep, and any other vehicle would have gotten stuck. But we finally got through the mud and got there in time. But another thing, Susan might remember this. I was teaching down at the old log school, and I'd zip over to the Roadhouse for lunch, and I'd always stay there just till the last minute and sit down, and a bunch of who was it, Art Conquest, and let's see, my brother, and I don't know who else, all the rest of this, Jerry. The motley crew of senior high school students down there. So I'm sitting in the Roadhouse, and it's 2 minutes to 1, and I dash out to get in the Volkswagen and get to school on time, and start the engine, and goes, and nothing happens. It just sits there. And then I began to notice how many people there were just casually leaning against the door of the Roadhouse. And it turned out the boys in my class had just gotten a little block of wood and just lifted up the Volkswagen, put it under there, and so it was just that far off the ground. just spinning, just the wheels just spinning away, but it wasn't going to move. Finally, they took pity on me, and and my fear of the wrath of Mr. Skeen, and they let me head on to school. But one thing that I do know from that experience, and from the experience of a lot of other people, that people in Bethel have a lot more affection, whether it's a very love-hate relationship with their vehicles around here, whether it's their snow machines or their boats or their cars or their trucks, and they have a personality, and they have a tremendous potential for evil, and they know when it's just the absolute worst time to do something to you, and that's when they do it. So thank you.